We're good. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Geeks and Company in another episode of The After Show. That's right. Today we are talking about Star Wars The Mandalorian, Season 3, Episode 6, Guns for Hire.
Pew,
Now,
pew,
we're
pew,
officially
pew.
now on the backside of the season. And I've seen a little bit of a shift. But before we get started, obviously we've got he's again on the other side this week.
So weird.
My buddy, Mr. Messiah Complex Cosplay. How's it going, Jeff?
Great. We're just trying to keep everybody on their toes. So you make sure you know who's who. So we'll just keep switching sides like this.
There you go. That works. That works.
Yeah.
Also, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please click the subscribe button. It really helps us out. Costs you absolutely nothing. And if you click the notification bell, it'll always let you know every time we either go live, upload one of these videos, or whatnot.
Today is
Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Today is Mando. I want to start by
Oh.
saying I can't see
Cameos.
so many cameos. There's a ton of cameos. We had Lizzo, we had Jack Black, we had Doc Brown himself.
Christopher Lloyd. My
Mr. Christopher
goodness.
Lloyd. Man, is he looking old, eh? Like I mean, I know he is old, but it hurts my soul when I see these actors that I grew up watching looking like old men now, and it makes me feel old, you know. But
because
we are, but you know, it is what it is.
I'm just saying.
Overall, though, I wasn't the biggest fan of this episode. It felt very disjointed. It felt all over the place. Not that it wasn't good in the sense that there was still a lot of action and the plot moved forward a tiny bit.
Oh, I think it moved forward a little more than a tiny bit.
Well, I mean, we had the ending. The ending is the only real plot development that we got.
Right.
I feel like this episode was a setup for something else. These characters that we're meeting, Jack Black and Lizzo, or Christopher Lloyd's character, I feel like this episode was to introduce us to those characters because they're going to come back before the end of the season. We got to see some Ugnaughts. You know, it wasn't a horrible episode. It just felt out of pace with the rest of the season so far.
Okay.
That's my initial thoughts. What do you...
No, for me, it felt very much like a first season or a second season Mandalorian. First season in particular, for sure, because a lot of the first season episodes were essentially self-contained things. Even the first episode of the second season, when they kill the crate dragon, like that doesn't really have anything to do with the greater story overall. It introduces a couple of new characters like Cobb Vanth, and we get a little bit more of the Sand People and everything else. But by and large, it's just a self-contained little story that happened to star the Mandalorian. I think the big difference between season 3 and what's come before is, of course, the side focus this year is not Grogu like it was in the previous 2 seasons, in particular season 2, with the huge lead up and then Luke Skywalker at the season 2. The side is not Grogu this season. It's Bo-Katan. And I think that's throwing some people off because Bo-Katan is not just a small, cute green thing that doesn't speak. She has all of her own feelings, thoughts, aspirations, and she drags this entire political upheaval with the Mandalorians into play. None of this is going on in Din's life on any level. He was just a guy making his way through the galaxy, how the show starts, and now he's wrapped up and broiled in this giant Mandalorian political brouhaha. So it's a departure from what we've seen thematically. I don't think it's a departure from what we've seen cinematically, how it's laid out. I think it's laid out very, very similarly too. It's just a shift in focus of characters. Personally, that's how I feel about it. I think it's fantastic. I think this episode answered a lot of questions and set us on the path that we thought we were going to be going on, right? She's out there trying to recruit other Mandalorians now. I mentioned last after show, she's not just going to be able to show up and they're all going to be like, oh, well, the armor has endorsed you, so clearly we're all just going to get on board. That is not what happened by any stretch of the imagination. She showed up. They told her to fuck off. She had to fight one of them to gain their trust. And she still then had to have what happened at the very end of the episode. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I guess I'm rambling. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, that's what we're here for, bud. Bo-Katan is getting a lot of character development that surprises me. I've said a couple times this season, this feels out of character for her. This feels out of character for her. I think she's changing, right? What we know of Bo-Katan from the Clone Wars, she was very young. She was not a kid, but almost, right? Like she was a young adult. Now she's a 30, or 40 some odd year old,
Mandalorian, sure,
Mandalorian.
yeah.
And you could see the change in her. And in the back of my mind, I keep thinking this is a red herring. Like she's gonna disappoint us, right? She's gonna turn into a jerk. She's not who they're making her out to be.
Right.
But
what if they are?
Yeah, more and more she seems to be what they're making her out to be, right? And I think we've been saying this for a couple weeks now, right? Like she's really becoming that person, right? She's becoming the princess she was meant to be.
And I think that's what you want at the end of the day, is you want that character development. You guys talk all the time about Ahsoka and how she became almost a completely different character as to how she started out by that character growth. Even Din, throughout the course of the first 2 seasons, how different he became, to a point where he literally took his helmet off at the end of the 2nd season after telling everybody for episode after episode after episode, it's the way to keep it on. You want that character growth. That's what you want to see the characters do. If they just stay stagnant and stay the same all the time over and over again, then that gets boring after a while. So, hey, we might still be right. Like there might still be the face or the heel turn, right? She might still turn when she has, because now, spoiler alert, she has the fucking Darksaber. So now she doesn't even need the Mythosaur anymore. Now it was a little bit of like, I know you're not a Harry Potter guy, but it was a little bit of like Draco, Dumbledore, Voldemort, Elder Wand type of thing. And for all my Harry Potter folks, you probably know what I'm talking about. The ownership of the Elder Wand ended up being a very weird, complicated thing that happened in the books and in the films. This kind of felt the same way. Well, I got captured and she beat the thing that beat me. So technically that kind of means she beats me. So here's the sword. And then she gets it.
Yeah, I hated that.
As I'm watching it, I'm like, he's gonna be mad.
No, I didn't like that at all.
Yeah.
I understand. Like I get it, right? He got beat. In the process of being beat and getting captured, he loses the Darksaber. Not only does she then find the Darksaber, but she does beat the person that beat him, that captured him and rescued him.
Right.
She's clearly more connected to the Darksaber than Din is, because she can wield it way better than he can.
100%.
To be fair, she's got a lot more practice with it. She's had it since she was a kid, like I said. I still don't like how they went about, you're supposed to win the Darksaber in battle.
Well, she didn't win it in battle.
Right? You're supposed to defeat the person, right? So I don't know. She did. She won it in battle, but she wasn't fighting Din, right?
She didn't win it in battle the first time either. It just got handed to her the first time on.
But that's why she lost it again after that, right?
Yeah.
That's why it didn't stick. That's why she never became the true leader of Mandalore, because Sabine just gave it to her.
Handed it to her. The transition felt McClunky. It felt a little bit weird, right? Like if Din really felt that, then why not during that episode? Why didn't you just be like, well, clearly this is yours now? Why would you wait 3 episodes to do it in front of a bunch of other Mandalorians just to make the point at that point? Like, oh, I'll just keep this in my back pocket.
Yeah, because remember how you were saying last week, we haven't seen the Darksaber in like 3 episodes, right? And
suddenly
now all of a sudden it comes out
in
front of everybody, and he gives it, and it's like, okay, so
he whipped it out earlier.
It's very MacGuffin. You're right. It's
the one droid that went crazy, the medical droid that went crazy, was lasering everything. He cuts it in half with a Darksaber. I'm like, he does have it. Look at that.
Yeah.
This would have come in handy 8 other times just during this episode alone, let alone the last few. And now that it would forward the plot. This is actually yours. You beat me. And she takes it, but like, it's not like she argues. And the other Mandos that are there, they don't seem to have a problem with the exchange either. They're like, like she asked him flat out, like, does that not make it hers? And he's like, yeah, I guess it does. So is this the beginning of, I don't know, man. Like if it is, let me just say, if it is, I am here for it. I love the character. I don't know Bo-Katan from anything but this show, and I love her on the show. I love Katie Sackhoff as an actress, as an actor. the character is badass. If that character ends up being the one that brings everyone together, like the Armorer thought, because this also, by the way, because the Armorer up until now has been seen not just as this religious zealot figure, but a leader and someone with a deeper and greater wisdom because of how closely connected she is with the rites and the ways and everything else of Mandalore. If Bo-Katan ends up not being the person that does this, it kind of calls into question everything about the Armorer's convictions and her judgment and everything else that the entire show has kind of built around her since literally the first very episode of this. So I don't know, man. I'm not as convinced anymore we're going to see the betrayal, which of course is what they want. They want to lull us into a false sense of security before they swerve us, but they've really positioned it. And we did talk about it too, by the way. He has to go with her. If Din's not there, this whole thing, none of this happens.
No.
Even if she goes to this planet, even if she figures out the robot thing, she doesn't win those Mandos over. Even after she fights the dude, she still doesn't win them over. If Din's not there, it doesn't happen. Even though Din's not a Mandalorian. You're right, I'm not. But look at all my cool Beskar that you guys are wearing and check out my funky sword here that none of you guys have. So
yeah, I'm not a Mando, but I'm covered in Beskar and I've got the dark saber. Like who's the real Mando here, right?
And now they have a fleet. I don't know if one capital ship and then just a bunch of other mid-range ships like the one Bo-Katan already has. I don't know if that would necessarily constitute a fleet these days, but I mean, it is a flotilla of ships that they have.
Yeah, I mean, compared to what the Mandos have now, which is nothing. Right? They've got Bo-Katan's ship and they've got Mandos N1.
Yeah,
that's it. Right?
No, 100%.
What they have, right? Yeah. So now they've got, which is weird because they're calling it an Imperial fleet, but that Star Destroyer is a pre-Empire ship.
Right.
It's a old Republic
ship, right?
Not an old Republic, but it's a Republic ship.
Before.
Yeah. Clone Wars.
It's a Clone
era
Wars
ship.
Correct.
Right?
It's the progenitor to. But is that not the same? Yes, but is that not the same ship that Gideon was going around in?
I think it might be.
Because that's the one they stole, right?
Yeah, I think it might be. That's the one they stole when they were trying to get to Moff Gideon.
There's a name for that ship, and I don't remember what it is.
I forget now.
Dumb, but anyways.
Either way, I mean, compared to what they had before, it's definitely more of a fleet now.
For sure.
It's not thousands of ships.
No, and that's what
it looks like it's a handful of ships. Well, so, I mean, there's a couple things we need to keep in mind, right? This is a TV show.
Yes.
There could be more ships than what they're showing us. That's the first
Fair.
Next episode, they could show up and they really have a couple hundred ships or a couple thousand ships for all we know. Right? That's the first thing we got to keep in mind.
Fair.
What good does it do? Well, it makes them a force to be reckoned with again. Right? It makes the Mandalorian, to the New Republic, to the Empire or the First Order or whatever they're going to be.
Unless you're right, unless there's 100 more ships behind that ship that got parked there, one mid-sized capital ship and then a bunch of what essentially are mid-level freighter type ships, that doesn't make them a threat to any of the groups you just mentioned because they can all completely outgun that like that.
They can, but they're Mandos.
No, I know, but Mandos on a ship seem to me they're not going to be the same as Mando.
So,
I mean, I know Din is
they're Mandos.
Yeah.
The other thing you got to remember also is that in the sequels, there was not even a mention of a Mando.
No. And what has to be said is there was a whole planet of these people and it got bombed into glass by the Empire. It's not like the Mandos go into every fight and they just win. They lost really badly and they've continued to lose. So I mean, what they have right now is a competent fighting force that could take on pirates or raiders or do what they were already doing. They could protect a rich world from said same pirates and raiders. That's essentially what they could run protection services or privateers. They were saying, what did they capture for privateer? They captured one lone little freighter ship that was belonged to a Quarren or whatever and brought back a Mon-Cal prince.
Now, these are also not the only Mandos that are out there.
No, granted. Absolutely.
Right?
It's the first
Those
group
are
of what's going to
clan.
be more. Yes, agreed.
It's the Kryze clan, basically, that
the Night Owls.
The Night Owls. That's who she goes to first.
Yeah,
right?
The Night Owls. Makes sense.
So there are other factions out there as well that I think that now they're going to go and reach out to, right? The end goal is taking back Mandalore.
Right.
So I don't
Which is
know
weird because
that
it's not really under anyone's control now. It's just a doomed, cursed planet. Like, who's
well, that's the thing. I
controlling?
think the idea
Nobody's
is not
there.
about taking control back as much as rebuilding. I
That's
think
what I'm saying.
that's
Yeah,
what they're looking at doing.
right. That makes more sense.
And the way that the armorer put it, and the way that Bo-Katan puts it, when she sees them, Mandalorians are stronger together.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to take all of them to come together to rebuild Mandalore.
Yeah. So
right?
do they use Navarro as sort of the staging now that
I
they
think
have
that's what
been
we're
trying
going
to
to start
land in
seeing.
Navarro and
Yeah.
build up their forces and get everything sort of centralized in Navarro, and then they'll go from Navarro to
I think that's what we're going to start
or
seeing.
whatever.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's I feel like there's still something missing. I feel like there's an overarching something, whether it's a main big bad or there's something we're not seeing.
Well, Gideon, I think, is the big thing now. Like,
Yeah,
we're waiting essentially on Gideon to show up in whatever manner he's going to show, because he's not just going to go away quietly. They've done a very good job of laying the groundwork for having Gideon's return. And
they didn't address last episode at all.
What do you mean?
The Beskar piece that they found in the ship.
No, this was an episode for Bo and Din. That's what this episode was about, and so that we could pepper in these cool but maybe semi-distracting cameos. Seeing Jack Black really took me out. Not gonna lie.
So I wanted to talk about that a little bit because same. The minute I saw Jack Black, I was like, "Is that Jack Black?"
Yeah.
Like, I can't wrap my mind around Jack Black being a character in Star Wars.
And it sucks because I love Jack Black and he's fantastic, but he's just so Jack Black. Like, it's hard to, like, as soon as you see him, it's just, you're like, oh God, that's Jack Black. I didn't. Guys, my hand up. Hi, I am an old, done man. I did not know that was Lizzo. I don't even really know who Lizzo is, but apparently that's Lizzo. That was his wife on the planet, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's
so Lizzo's a singer.
Okay.
She's a pop singer. She's very, very popular. She has a ton of very popular songs.
That's good.
She's not a very good actress at all.
The singers typically aren't.
Yeah, she was horrible. Like, you could, like, the acting was just to the point where I'm like, what? Like, why would you bother bringing, like, this person in to do a cameo if that person can't act?
Well,
like, it takes you out of the show
because of everything you just said.
Well, I get that, but
we're not the only ones watching it, right? Like, they're trying to appeal to as wide an audience as possible, and I'm sure there's a demographic out there that loves her work and loves her stuff. Obviously, if she's very popular, then they do, and that might get excited to have her in this episode, right? Instead of just two old white guys like Christopher Lloyd and Jack Black, they have a younger woman of color on the show that's already got a built-in fan base. I'm sure that's part and parcel.
I mean, 100% that's why they did it. But, you know, as a Star Wars fan, even if I like Lizzo or not, her acting was so bad that it's just, even Jen was like, oh, I love her as a singer, but man, is she bad in this. Yeah, she was horrible. And even Jack Black, I was like, are you specifically acting this weird, or like, is the character supposed to be this weird?
I don't know.
Or even Jack Black felt off in his acting.
I didn't know if any of this had been seen before, if this world or his character. Like, I didn't know, because I haven't watched any of the animated stuff. I didn't know if these were all
that I know
creations or if these were things we'd seen before. But yeah, it did take me. It's at the end of the day, it's fun, and that's what the show's supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun, and it is. And this episode was, and the little whodunit with the robots was cool. When the battle droids are hauling all the freight, and the Rogers giving him shit, and droids kicking, the Din's kicking him, and he's even like, "Well, I found out which one it was, didn't I?" Like, I do like the interplay between him and Bo. I do like how he still has that bit of that irreverent streak in him. That he's still like, it's easier for me to solve problems with a kick and a gun than it is for me to try to figure shit out. Like, I still like that about him. I still need him to be that old West gunslinger that he's purported to be for the first two seasons and stuff. And I know we softened him with the whole Grogu thing and everything else, but it was nice to see that little bit of edge still with our boy Din there in this episode.
She's like, again, when we get in there, let me do the talking. He's like, why?
He's like, why?
Because we need answers.
Yeah.
Because your style is not going to work. You're just going to go
in and shoot everybody. Although, again, when that was now dealing with the Ugnaughts was very, very cool. The way he used his connection with the one that was with him in season 1 that unfortunately died.
Quill.
Yeah, Quill. Yeah, Quill. Yeah, that was cool. Having him speak in that manner and having them be able to talk to them specifically, because of course Bo goes into every situation like, I am Bo-Katan Kryze, and this is what's going to happen. And everybody looks at her like, who the fuck are you? And why should we do that? When Din Djarin is the more diplomatic of the two, you know something's wrong. Because again, his usual diplomacy is kick you in the face, shoot you in the back, and leave. So I mean, it's like we got a problem here. Like that's Din's version of diplomacy. We got a problem here, guys.
I mean, I feel like it was well played in the sense that he had to spend so much time with Quill, right? While they're reprogramming IG and rebuilding him.
He's trying to ride the blurg and whatever.
Yeah, and he really becomes close with Quill,
absolutely.
Right? So he gets to understand. It was great that they it wasn't just Bo-Katan, she could do everything and she's the best. No, right? She comes in and she starts talking and they don't even give a shit.
No,
they're not even turning around to look at her.
Yeah, it literally it was like, the pair that was like the best buddy cop movie. Like I would watch that. I would absolutely watch that show. Oh yeah, just the two of them farting around the galaxy, bickering with each other and getting into weird situations. I would be, if that was episodic instead of serialized like this is. I would be here for that. That. The interplay between them was very, very good and much needed, I got to say. Very much needed. I'm glad they got the two of them kind of off on their own and had a chance for them to really bond, as it were, in this episode.
Yeah, because a dynamic is changing now,
absolutely,
right? Like you can really feel that there's a dynamic between them now that
was not
they're playing off of each other now, that they're I don't want to say they're linking the two characters, but they kind of are.
Little bit,
right? The two characters are now kind of dependent on each other.
Yeah,
right? I'm really liking that
because it seems like he's kind of throwing in with her, but at the same time, it's almost like, wait a minute, I suddenly inherited all these responsibilities I didn't want. I'm just gonna like push these over to you because you want it anyway, and I want nothing to do with it. So it's gonna seem like I'm really backing you, and at the end of the day, I just don't want any of this. I just want to get my green weird kid and just go off venturing in the galaxy like we were before. I didn't want to be messed up in all this bullshit in the first place. So it's a really cool way of them doing it. And that's why, believe it or not, I understand the problems with this episode, but overall, I thought it was really, really good. And it did some very important things. So I am looking forward to next week for sure.
Yeah, I feel like we're getting close to the end now. And
we're in the end game for sure.
For sure the last two episodes are going to be killer, right? I have a hard time believing they'll be able to top
8. Yeah, so there are only 2.
Yeah, so I have a hard time believing that the way that the season is going, that they'll be able to top season 2's finale.
No.
With Luke coming back and making grown men cry.
No, there's no way.
It's not going to happen, I don't think. But they're going to have to. There's going to need to be a massive Hail Mary to really properly finish off these last 2 episodes, because so far it's kind of been a pointless drift through space, right? It's not until last week that, okay, now we have a mission. Right now we know we want to unify Mandalore and we want to take the planet back. But there's 3 episodes left at that point, right? Like, what are we doing here?
Well, and this was agreed. I still feel like the way they got here was relatively organic because they did what you said essentially what they had to do. They had to introduce us to Bo-Katan and get us familiar with her character, especially people like me that haven't watched all the pre stuff. And I think they've done that. They've done that very well. I think they've done a good job of showing us who she is, what her motivations are, why we should give a shit. If they just jacked her into this plot line, if they were doing this 4 episodes ago, I don't think it works. Now that 3rd episode with Dr. Pershing on Coruscant, I mean, holy fucking shit, did we ever not need that? That could have been a lot of, I don't know what the payoff for that's going to be, but you want to talk about stick in the landing. That better mean something. If I spent 40 minutes on Coruscant with that fucking nerd and it turns out to be just nothing, just to show that the one girl that's supposed to have been rehabilitated, Kane, is not rehabilitated and she's still working for Gideon. If that whole episode if that's the only payoff, fuck you, the Mandalorian show, because
I feel like it is, because he's basically brain dead, you would think now, right? Like, What else is there going to be with him?
I don't know if it has to be him specific, but it has to be something that was there in that episode that makes me think that those 40 minutes were worth my while. Because so far, if I rewatch it, I'm skipping that episode. I honestly, because what would be the point of rewatching it? Like,
well, so far, I mean, with 2 episodes left, that episode was pointless.
100% pointless.
You know, they could have just introduced that character of Kane in passing here and there and have her for a couple of scenes, and that would probably be good enough.
Per episode. Just have her have
now you had a full episode, the longest episode of the season, right? By far. It was an hour-long episode.
I don't like it.
Of
what? Nothing. Just to mind wipe him at the end?
Yeah.
Who cares?
That was dumb. But in any case, folks, let us know what you thought about this episode. Because for me, like, it wasn't a bad episode, but like I said, the cameos really pulled me out of it. It felt like a setup episode, but again, I don't know what they're setting up, considering there's just 2 episodes left. I don't know. I don't really know what to think about this episode.
That's cool, man. I did find the cameos a little bit weird, but I did like the character build and the plot threads that were furthered in this episode. And like we talked about, the dynamic between Din and Bo, which I think is very important. I think that's going to pay off as well. So,
well, there's less and less to theorize on the closer we get to the end.
Of course.
The less there's going to be to theorize on. So we'll keep that for the last episode as far as what's going to happen next. But guys, like I said, let us know what you think below. Make sure you click that like button. It really lets us know that you like to watch these videos, and make sure we do more. I think that's going to be it. We'll see you guys tomorrow. The after show, Star Trek Picard. Stay geek, everybody. We'll see you then.